Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee. I want to thank everyone who is here today to engage in this important discussion. We do have two items today. The first one is an FY21 savings plan. This is actually round 2. And the second one is a review of our fiscal policies. And so I would like to preface the discussion today by stating that savings plans are definitely not my favorite thing to do. But as we will discuss more in depth during item 2, our current fiscal situation does not lend itself to increasing spending. We are obviously in a period of economic contraction, and while the impact has been somewhat mitigated, thanks to the quick thinking of state and local leaders throughout our region, the lack of federal action under the previous administration has only exacerbated our fiscal challenges. And while we all hope that this new administration will be able to get a new relief package through Congress quickly, we must be disciplined and proactive in taking steps to preserve essential services and position ourselves for a speedy economic recovery. As a council, we have been deliberate in using the racial equity and social justice law to inform our actions during the pandemic, and I would like to see staff's analysis take the law into serious consideration as we review recommendations. I have asked our attorney, Bob Drummer, about the need for the county executive to provide an explanation of the racial equity and social justice impact of the savings plan. And he responded that it is the intent of the law that the executive provide one through the Method 2 regulation that we are yet to receive. And so I'll be following up with the county executive on this issue. I also believe that the fiscal policy should be accompanied by an impact statement, and we should clearly state that it would be informed by the law. Specific references to how, especially in the use and replenishment of the reserve funds, how this also has an impact on our racial equity and social justice work. So in terms of the savings plan before us, I note that most of the savings are to be realized from lapse and turnover. And while on the macro level, these funds are not much, they do have a significant impact on the departments and the residents that they serve. As we go through the packet, I would like to know why several of these vacancies were not filled for their budgeted purpose, and how the departments have been performing those functions, especially during this pandemic. As we all know, this council was extraordinarily proactive in adopting a very large number of special appropriations precisely to provide direct relief, but also capacity for our local government to serve and mitigate our residents because of this horrible pandemic. And so it is, for me personally, it's just always strange to then see that there were all these particular positions that were not filled and that, should have been there providing that kind of support to our residents. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Craig Howard from council staff to walk us through the materials for the first item. And just really want to thank everyone for being here to engage in this very important conversation. And first, actually, let me see, do my colleagues have any opening remarks that they would like to make? Councilmember Katz-Feetson? No? All right, so we'll turn it over to Mr. Howard.
Wonderful, thank you very much, and good morning to all the committee members. So, as you know, as Chair Navarro, there is a table on the front of the first page of the packet that lists all the different departments and the savings that were included in the county executive's round 2 savings plan. We have a team of staff here today who will go through and cover each of the different departments. So we'll trade on and off and go through each one. As you noted, many of the savings are due to lapse and turnover, and lots of them have already accrued. However, it is very important to go through and have a better understanding of what the savings imply for each department. And so we also, in addition to the council staff, we have representatives from each department here to answer any questions that the committee members may have on any of the different savings. Just kind of in summary, there's a total of about $1.8 million in recommended savings for the different departments that the GO committee covers. Council staff does recommend approval of all the savings as recommended, except for one item, $40,000 in the Office of Intergovernmental Relations, which we'll talk about. I think that's our very last department to go through. So with that as the intro, I will first turn it over to Dr. Charegas to run through the Department of Technology Services.
Thanks, Craig. So in the Department of Technology Services, and if I can make an editorial comment tomorrow, you'll be hearing an introduction of a bill to change that name from DTS. It's going to be TEBS from now on, Department of Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions, if you so agree with that bill. DTS, and we have Gail Roper, the CIO, and Felicia Hyde from the Also Management Budget, and Allison Dollar from DTS Budget Office with us as well. As you see, there's a reduction of $515,612 for this round of savings, or 1.2% of the original approved appropriation. Taken together with the last round of savings, that's going to take it up to about 6% of the original budget. The savings come from lapse in 6 positions, 5 senior information technology specialists and 1 program specialist. Given the severity of the pandemic and the degree to which we have to all depend on technology to keep us together and keep us moving as a county government, I made sure that there would be no programmatic or service impact of these changes. And indeed, Ms. Roper was able to confirm that contractors are currently backfilling these lapse positions, and as a consequence, there is no service impact. With that, I would recommend to you that you approve this savings plan of DTS, or TEBS, as it will be known. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Torregas. Any comments from my colleagues? No? Regrettably, we will accept this particular item. Again, let me just once again highlight that, especially during this pandemic, as it was noted, we're relying more and more and more on technology. And so it is important, I think, especially, for the administration to take that into consideration. Again, because we probably will have to come back and address a lot of these capacity issues, because there is no way that we will not continue to highly rely on, in a much more augmented way, on technology going forward. But at this moment in time, regrettably, we will accept this recommendation.
Okay, our next department is the Office of Human Resources on page 2 of the staff report. And in OHR, the executive recommends a reduction of $385,000, or 4.9% of the original approved FY21 appropriation. This would, combined with the first savings plan, would result in a total reduction of 6.0% for OHR. In the first savings plan, the reduction was much smaller, and it was operating savings based, whereas this savings plan is primarily due to $310,000 in lapse savings from currently unfilled positions. OHR indicates that there was no additional service impact from assuming these lapse savings. And there's also a $75,000 reductions related to the occupational medical services lab service. And this is a technical adjustment resulting from a carryover purchase order. And again, OHR indicates that they will have no service impact from this reduction. And Mr. Attia from OHR, as well as Mr. Orlowski from OMB, are available if there are any questions. And sorry, council staff recommends approval of this reduction. Thank you.
All right, colleagues, any questions? Or without objection, we will accept this reduction.
Okay, moving on to the third department, which again is mine, is the Office of Inspector General. So for OIG, the executive recommended a reduction of $171,000, or 9.3% of their original approved FY21 appropriation. Combined with the initial savings plan, this would be a total reduction of 14.1% for the office, which is substantially higher than other departments. But the savings does reflect actual lapse savings that accrued from the delayed hiring of 4 positions. Ms. Lamarzi, who is available to here today, has informed us that all 4 positions have now been filled. 2 of the 4 positions started in December, 1 started in January, and the last one was filled and started in February. And if I got any of those dates wrong, please correct me, Ms. Lamarzi. And so this is lapse savings that has already accrued, and so there is no additional service impact. But going forward, having these positions filled will allow the office to, continue on with the work, especially with the additional functions that were that were included in the recent legislation passed by the council. So council staff does recommend approval of this reduction.
Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, thanks for the explanation. When I first saw this, I will say I was very concerned, and looking at some of my colleagues' facial expressions, I think we all kind of went through the same mental processes. We'd worked so hard to ensure that the office has the resources that it needs. I think now more than ever, with all the federal money coming in, these new programs that we're being asked to do, we're moving quicker than we've ever had to move with a lot of taxpayer money, and to make sure that it is handled appropriately and responsibly is extremely important, perhaps more than it ever has been before. And we have a number of reports that, for better and for worse, have demonstrated that. So I just wanted to thank you for that. But I'm glad that we're realizing, lapses that it took to ramp up, as opposed to hindering the office's ability to be able to do the job that we've asked you to do and that taxpayers need you to do. I did just wanted to see if we could get a quick understanding of how this fits in. This was like a multi-year ramp up expectation, not just with who you've brought on. Now you're fully staffed for what was expected in FY21, but it's from what it sounds like with these positions. But how does that foretell for where you expect to be moving forward for the rest of this fiscal year and next fiscal year?
Sure. Good morning, and thank you. A lot of this was lapsed. It was getting us organized to get the audit division under control and ready to go so that we can meet the mandate from 11/19, and a little reorganization. Once I was in the office and figured out how we were going to be able to work, I did have to reclassify a position. And these are auditors. 3 of the 4 were auditors as we got started. So that took some time. I think the job market was strange at the end of the summer, and so it took us a little time to fill it in. So as you noted, Mr. Friedson, we are at our complement for FY20 and 21 with the same services budget. We didn't continue with the ramp up that had been anticipated or forecast, if you will, when 11/19 came into place. So my hope is that when the executive takes a look at the budget, and when the council then takes a look at the recommended budget this spring, that we will be able to get a little bit more on course to continue to grow the audit division so that we can meet the mandate and have those rotating audits of each department on a responsible rotation. I think getting further from 4 years between each audit will give you very stale information. So I really want to get us to a point where we are on that 4-year rotation that I know you're familiar with from the state level. And so we'll just continue to grow, but we are really up and running now, and it's looking good. It's very exciting, and I continue to thank you, the entire committee, for your support of the office. And I'll definitely be back this spring.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll just say, this is disproportionate savings, compared to other departments, given the time that it took to ramp up. I hope that our committee will continue to push the executive to make sure that you have the resources needed for us to have the programs that we're putting in place. We have to have the guardrails and the controls in place in order to keep up with that. I see those things as hand in glove, and so I just hope that that will be taken into consideration with the next budget as it comes forward. We've made that clear in the past. I just wanted to reiterate it here and appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. And I associate myself fully with your thoughts as well, and I appreciate the explanation. All right, I think without objection, yes, that's Councilmember Katz, absolutely. All right, so without objection, we will accept that recommendation. Thank you so much, Mr. Morrison.
Okay, great. So the next department is the County Council and Legislative Branch Communications NDA, and this is on page 3 of the staff report. The executive recommends a reduction of $390,976 combined for the Office of the County Council budget and the Legislative Branch Communications MDA. which is about 2.9% of the original approved FY21 appropriation. This would result in a total reduction of 5.6% for the council when combined with the July savings plan. First, for the county council office budget part, this is a combination of about $140,000 in operating savings and a little less than $60,000 in personnel savings. The operating savings reflects the reduction in printing and other costs associated with the continued remote operations, and we did not take operating savings as part of the first savings plan because at that time we were unsure of what the continued state of remote operations would be. So this reflects kind of where we are now with the continued teleworking and remote situation. The personnel savings in the council office budget primarily reflects accrued lapse savings from the hiring process. We've now fortunately been able to finalize those hires, and we have in place a manager 2 position, which is the racial equity manager. And that position was filled, and Ms. Olson started last week, actually, was her first week. So we're very excited about that. And it also reflects savings from a legislative attorney position. That was actually turnover savings, and that position was filled in mid-January. I do want to note that as part of these savings, we do anticipate keeping an administrative support position lapsed through the end of the fiscal year. And again, that's primarily due to the continued remote operations and lessens the need for that position. For the legislative branch communications NDA, this will be about $189,000 in savings. And this is, again, primarily due to personnel costs due to the lapse. The council communications team has been working on expanding its staff and filling vacancies, and they finalized the hiring of 2 public information officer positions in the past month, one of which was added by the council as part of the FY21 budget, and then anticipates hiring a graphics and visual information specialist shortly. So again, they will be up to fully staffed as planned and able to continue along into FY22. So council staff recommends approval of these reductions as submitted by the executive.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. I think it is also important to note that these are all issues with lapse and obviously, some delays in hiring. But I do want to, again, reiterate the importance of making sure that the council, the county council has the capacity vis-a-vis staff support for us to be able to do our work and serve our residents. This is a very complicated endeavor, contrary to what some people might put on social media who are not perhaps familiar with what we do. It is important to remind our residents that this is a council that has a very generous charter. I mean, we are able to add and subtract to the budget. We pass all, we're responsible for all the land use decisions, of course, legislation, as well as I said, the budget. And so it is a very intricate operation to serve a county of over 1 million residents with almost almost nearing $8 billion. And in my humble opinion, having served on the county council, it is a very lean operation, but you have to be careful with that because you can then start teetering into a situation where you don't have the necessary support, the necessary analyst in order for us to, again, serve a county of this size with this budget, and also a very diverse county geographically, but also racially, ethnically, and socioeconomically. And to me, it's been pretty evident during this pandemic, the importance to not shortchange the capacity of our council vis-a-vis our staff. So I appreciate the explanation, but I do want to reiterate that going forward, this is something that I will be paying very close attention in terms of making sure that, indeed we have that kind of human resource necessary for us to serve our residents appropriately. Let's see, anything from my colleagues in terms of this? Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Well said. I just wanted to agree with you and say very clearly that we continue to say, our council, every person on the council says communication is the key to what we do. And obviously the reason we enhanced the legislative branch communications area was because of that. And I know it takes a while, just as Councilmember Friedson said earlier, it takes a while to hire people. But now we have to make certain that we continue to fund the positions that we have hired, so that we can continue to communicate. As good as we do, we can always do better, and we needed to do better. So anyhow, I agree with you, and I support these recommendations. But going forward, we do have to be careful what we're doing.
Thank you so much. All right, without objection, we will accept the recommendation.
Okay, next is Community Engagement Cluster with Ms. Chen.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. This has been a speed talking morning, so I'm going to try to slow it down a little. I'm Carolyn Chen, Legislative Analyst. I will review the Community Engagement Cluster Savings Plan. It was a perfect segue from what Mr. Katz said about communication being key. This is a very key group for our multi-communications and multilingual force that this past year. The executive has recommended a 3% reduction in savings, $127,000. This is actually the same as of savings plans number 1, and it's a reflection of lapse that has already happened. So just to give you a little bit of idea, the administrative services structure of the community engagement cluster is a shared services. It's business management services. It has 4 positions allocated for over a decade, and no more than 1 or 2 positions have been filled over the last 10 years. So this overall model of shared services for the community engagement cluster is under review. Completely under review. And I think we'll have more to talk about, I know we'll have more to talk about in fiscal year 22. So at this time, yes, recommending to approve the lapse savings of $127,000, which is a representative of 3 vacant positions by the executive, and to then discuss in fiscal year 22 ways to change this model and also expand capacity. We do have let me see, Ken Hartman here, Director of BCC Regional Services Center, Matthew Matthews, Director of Up County Regional Services Center, for any questions, and Corey Orlowski, Acting Manager, Office of Management and Budget, if we have any questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Chen, and it's good to see you, Ms. Matthews, as well as Mr. Hartman and everybody else. I think, I do want to commend both our council communications office as well as this group of community engagement cluster, because very quickly you've both entities have retooled and adapted to the needs that were just immediately thrusted in front of us. And I know that with, I work with Councilmember Albornoz and all my colleagues really to help put together a template for communications very quickly once the pandemic hit. And it was both on the executive side and on the council side, taking into consideration multilingual, multicultural, culturally appropriate ways to communicate. And we are perfecting this every single day, and it could not happen if it wasn't for this amazing group of people with extraordinary professional caliber, but also with an incredible dedication and commitment to our residents. So I want to thank you so much. Again, Ms. Sonia Healy, who leads our council communications office, and Mr. Hartman, as well as, Barry and everybody who came together to do all this extraordinary work. I think that we also have learned a lot, and I look forward to our conversation during the budget process to see how we can best, in some ways, continue and enhance the models that we've put forth. I still remember like it was yesterday when some of us tried to realign and redefine the way that we looked at and utilized our regional services centers and tried to do it in a hub model fashion. This was under the Leggett administration. We didn't quite get there. And sometimes I look back and I think, wow, if we had done that perhaps during the recession, it would have been easier to just stand up this additional work. But I think now we have been, thrown into this particular way of doing things in the community, and it's been well received. So again, I really look forward to these, further conversations to see how we can realize these best practices and really, respond. It's awesome to see also other jurisdictions looking at what we're doing, because it has been well embraced. So thank you all for everything. And again, regrettably, without objection, I think that we will accept this recommendation as well. Thank you.
And then our last two departments are covered by Mr. Camacho.
Good morning. So the first office that we're going to discuss is the Office of the County Attorney. So the executive recommends a reduction of $188,926 for the Office of the County Attorney, or 2.9% of the original FY21 appropriation. Taken together with the first savings plan, this would total 5.9% reduction. And so this round of savings primarily deals with operating expenses. So things like office supplies, metropolitan travel, books, computer equipment repairs, things that are no longer so necessary within the current telework environment. So that's the bulk of the savings. The other part of the savings, which is about $48,857, is a lapse savings from an administrative aid position. While the county attorney's office would still appreciate that position to be filled, it does not have a service impact, or the service impact would be minimal. As such, council staff recommends approving the reductions as recommended by the executive, given the county's fiscal position currently.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho. Any thoughts from my colleagues or any questions? All right, without objection, we will accept that recommendation.
Great, thank you. And so the last item that we're going to discuss is the Office of Intergovernmental Relations. So this recommendation stems from the first savings plan, where the county executive recommended a $68,186 reduction in a professional services contract that allows the county to retain and negotiate federal leases within the county. The GO committee approved a lesser savings, the first savings plan, so $28,186. The county executive has now recommended a reduction of $40,000, which would combined with the $28,000 would be a total reduction of the contract. And so council staff recommends a rejection of this recommendation, just given the economic climate and the potential for federal agencies to consider different real estate leasing options. We would not want the county to miss out on those opportunities. This contract expires March 3rd. So this pool of funds would allow the Office of Intergovernmental Relations to rebid this contract and perhaps use a different structure that is perhaps less costly. I know this was discussed previously. However, now that the contract is expiring, this would allow OIR to explore a different type of contracting option while still retaining these services within the county. So this is why the council staff has recommended rejecting this. And if you have any questions, Melanie Winger from OIR, Wanda Wells also from OIR. We also have Philip Weida and Jane Mukira here from OMB to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So obviously this is not a very large amount of money, and we did have a conversation during the first round of the savings plan. But I guess I'm just curious as to why the executive doesn't believe that it's necessary to have this there. I'm also curious to know whether this is something that, our Economic Development Corporation could at least take up, at least some of the functions. And is it that the executive feels that that is a possibility and that they can then take it from there and, do all the work of the actual lease negotiation, et cetera, in-house? I'm just not, I guess I'm just, I don't mind saying sure, but if the executive doesn't seem to want it, I don't know why we would keep pushing it, because the worst that can happen is that, we say, no, you need to keep this, you need to do it, but then nothing necessarily is done. And perhaps we can, maybe use those funds somewhere else where they could be used a little bit more strategically and aggressively, like our Economic Development Corporation or something of that sort. So just wondering about those points. Ms.
Right.
Wenger.
And I'd like to just address a few of those points first. So I think you're right in that MCEDC may be better positioned to maybe take up these services. And I think that is a discussion that the committee may or should have during the FY22 budget process. I think that it's my understanding that if these funds were to be lapsed now, so from March to the end of the fiscal year, there would be no funds for this service, for this contract. And as such, it may put the county in a position, at least for that time period, to not be competitive in that space. So that's my understanding. But if Ms. Wenger has something else to offer.
No, I appreciate that. And I guess, again, I just want to understand how competitive have we been so far. So, yeah, Ms. Wenger.
I don't have a lot to add to this. We obviously in the first round, we discussed this, and there are ongoing discussions on the second floor about a different approach here and who would be best positioned to actually manage this contract. I think if you all are aware that the Office of Intergovernmental Relations inherited this contract, I think in 2015, when the Economic Development Department was dissolved. And so, but this contract has largely been managed or worked with someone in economic development who was on the second floor, who has recently departed county service. So that's kind of where this stands. I think, it's an issue of how the county would prioritize a contract like this, having to do with the real estate in the county on federal facilities. And the conversations are ongoing on the second floor. I have made them aware of, or more aware of this conversation maybe of late than I might have been aware. And so I think that there are opportunities to continue to create some type of coverage for this type of exposure that the county might have.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I still don't. I just feel like every dollar counts, and if we're just going to, continue to preserve something just because it looks like a good idea, but then it's not being utilized in the most strategic way, I'm just not sure. Councilor Feetson.
Yeah, thanks. I share the thoughts of the chair here. So a couple things. One, the idea behind the contracts that we don't have the core competency within county government, quite understandably, to know exactly what federal leasing opportunities there would be, which is a fairly specialized area, and to be able to compete for those vacancies. And this is a key area that we have office vacancies, we have strategic opportunities, and we want to make sure that we're seizing those opportunities. And, frankly, there are tens of millions of dollars at stake, and this is tens of thousands of dollars in cost. So, I think we all agree and have expressed that, previously. I think the concern that I have is twofold. One, the county executive, put forward in his last savings plan this contract. Now it's being zeroed out, and it's not clear what, if any, plan there is. So if we restore this funding, the $40,000, is there going to be a rebid? This is not going to be approved until March, to know whether or not this is going to be in there. The next budget is going to be sent over, a week or two after that. It's unclear to me, given the county executive's actions over the last two savings plans, of whether or not this is part of his plan for moving forward. And would it even be appropriate to move forward with $40,000 left in it for the rest of the fiscal year if there's not going to be continued funding for FY22. So that's unclear. Separately from that, I think there are a lot of opportunities, as Chair Navarro mentioned, to potentially move this to MCEDC or to another more appropriate entity, because this really is more economic development than it is lobbying and government relations. And we have great respect for you and your team, Ms. Wanger, but this isn't really what you do. You're not in the real estate business. You're in the policy and legislative analysis business, and we're asking you here to do something that's really beyond what it is that you do, and what your core competency is, and what you hire people to do. And I think we have tremendous talent on your team. And so, but here we are. The savings plan on this and identifying this issue was in July, and nothing from the executive branch on this. And then adding to that, we have a lot of other related efforts, some of which the county executive is very bullish on, and I share his bullishness, so to speak, in terms of opportunity, particularly in the biohealth space related to post-pandemic Montgomery County, and how positioned we are in that, and where does this fit in to that? It should be directly related, in terms of our tech talent pipeline with the federal government and federal partnerships, and there's no connection there either. And so it does feel like there's a bit of a disconnect here, and it's just not really clear. We have no real strategic thought or communication coming from the county executive and the chief administrative officer of where this fits in to the broader strategy and what they plan on doing moving forward. And it makes it very difficult for us, as the chair noted, to say, we're going to keep this $40,000 in without any clarity on whether or not there's really going to be a serious effort to put this out to bid. And how long does that process take? Because again, if this isn't available till March, the contract ends March 1st. At what point will somebody actually be on the ground, and how much money will be available to actually get that work? That's unclear to me as well.
All right. Anybody else? Councilor McCann.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat what was just said. My concern is the $40,000 is an investment, and the reality is that we have a much better opportunity now to get federal contracts than we did with the previous administration. So we need to be aggressive in trying to get federal agencies to continue or to expand in Montgomery County. But to Councilmember Friedson and to the committee chair's point, the $40,000 for this contract is not going to get us there. My concern is what's going to happen in the interim. I think it should be in the hands of the MCEDC. I think we should be able to do that as quickly as we can. The only problem that I see is how fast they can actually take this handoff so that we will be competitive. So the $40,000 to me is an investment, and I do believe that we should figure out if we don't put it here, that's fine because it hasn't been used. But if we don't put it here, the next question is where is it going to be and how fast is it going to be there? Thank you.
All right. Well, is there a possibility? I'm just thinking out loud here. Is there a possibility for our central office staff to check and see whether this is something that at least our Economic Development Corporation can take up, at least with that bridge until we go through our budget and then make a much more robust decision? Again, yes, it's $40,000. You would think that's not a lot, but as it was stated, it's just always felt like a weird fit for the Office of Intergovernmental Relations. If I feel uncomfortable just saying, yeah, let's go ahead and keep it there because somehow it makes us all feel great that, we have this, but it's not the best fit. And therefore, if it's not going to be used, appropriately, then what was the point versus figuring out whether, there could be a handoff to at least at the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, and then that can start that kind of I guess, area for them, and we can, see how it goes through the budget if we need to obviously augment that, or how does it complement? Is that a possibility? And then, we can, I guess we can literally, you can just let us know as a follow-up if that is possible, and then I guess when we come to full council, we can make a decision. I don't know if we might be able to find a time for the GO to just quickly just take that item up again. Mr. Howard?
Yeah, we can certainly do that, and we'll see what we can talk to folks and see what we can figure out in the next week before council is scheduled to take up the savings plan to see if we can provide kind of a path forward. And I think the staff's concern was that this is something that definitely needs to be dealt with as part of the FY22 budget for how it is handled going forward, as you've all mentioned, and whether taking this reduction now would provide would lead to a potential gap in services. If that's not the case, then maybe it's a so to speak, non-consequential reduction. But we just wanted to be careful in terms of making sure there wasn't a gap in services and or that there was a plan going forward. To take the reduction and not have a plan going forward would be more concerning, I think.
Exactly. No, and I think you've heard from all of us that this is a very critical window of time in terms of where we are with our, economic recovery, et cetera, and that there are so many opportunities for Montgomery County. So I just want to make sure that strategically we are providing, some additional resources to the folks that are actually already working in this space versus, just kind of by inertia, keeping it in an office that actually has a totally different mission. And so, it's not a win-win at all. So if we could quickly take a peek and see, that would be awesome. Councilmember Fritz, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Just as a follow-up to that, first of all, there is a gap in service no matter what we do here because the contract ends on March the 1st, and this is going to be approved by the full council, shortly after that. And so, I think to a certain extent, they have to procure this. I've served on a lot of evaluation committees for procurement. It doesn't happen overnight, nor should it. And so, unfortunately, we're in the situation that we're in. I don't think we can control that at this point. The county executive's intention is to have a gap in service, to eliminate it entirely. It's not clear, how or why that would happen. So, to me, at least, it would be helpful when come back to understand what was their plan, what is their plan for this, so that we don't have that gap in service, what the timing would be in order to procure this, and if it's being replaced, the same idea is being replaced in a different area, something that the executive branch, the CAO, the county executive are working on. It sure would be nice for us to be looped into that and aware of it, because as of right now, there is no clarity on that. So I agree with everything that's been said. It would just be helpful to get a little bit more answers here, because we have questions, but not a whole lot of answers from the executive branch. And it's not from OIR, just to be clear, Ms. Wanger. It's really from the second floor. You're just out there executing the game plan. But at a certain point, we need to be talking to the person who's establishing that game plan and figuring out, where we're going from here.
Yep. Great. All right. So I think we'll park that one then, and then circle back in order for us to hopefully make the most strategic decision here. Really do appreciate Mr. Camacho bringing that up as well and flagging this, because it is important. It is part of a much broader, very important endeavor for Montgomery County, which is our economic development and our strategic recovery. So we'll figure that one out. Okay. Mr. Howard, anything else?
Nope, that takes care of the savings plan.
All right. So really appreciate everybody's work on this. So now let me find my notes. We will move on to item 2, and this is a discussion on our reserves and selected fiscal fiscal policies. Mr. Michael, Mr. Smith, and Howard have prepared a packet for us, and I want to really thank them for working so hard to get this to us. We had an opportunity to meet a few times just to discuss a little bit what this is all about. And I know that previously we had discussions in GO as well as with the full council about a desire to be deliberate in examining our fiscal policies and either affirming, modifying, doing something different perhaps, but really needing to have an opportunity to go in depth and have some discussions. Now, the pandemic has sort of come as it has on so many different levels and different policies to put a spotlight on this more than ever. But I think it is important to remind ourselves that strong fiscal policies help our county maintain a strong financial base. And obviously, it's what has helped us respond to the many needs of our residents during times of growth, but especially during emergencies like the one that we are still in. It is important to also remember that, I think as a complement to our fiscal policies, so we just discussed, is our economic development, strategic vision and plan, our efforts. And I want to remind all of us that in 2019, we came together to adopt an economic development platform as a very, very, very high level framework for economic development and very important components that we all agreed were part of this effort, which of course were housing, transportation, business, and workforce development. And all of this it's critical as we have this conversation about fiscal policies, because this is not just one static particular piece. It is the interaction of all of these elements that have been able to help Montgomery County be in the situation we are, not just retaining our AAA bond rating even through the very difficult recession, but also has enabled us to respond to the needs of the most vulnerable while maintaining a high quality of life for everyone. But this is all very fragile, and we have learned that the hard way. And it is because we have been able to, again, come together and agree on a plan going forward that we've been able to confront and I think overcome very difficult times, again, as I said, during the last recession, for example. And so we are here again to take a look at Resolution 17-312, which is Reserve and Selective Fiscal Policies. In 2011, we did set some particular parameters, and we agreed on achieving particular targets. And no doubt that has also been difficult to do, because we know that our revenues have not necessarily every year, we have not been able to hit the target that we expected. So we've had our ups and downs, but I think generally speaking, we've always been very disciplined and have always prioritized meeting those targets. But we are here now in the middle of this unprecedented crisis, having to, I remember how when I first joined the council, very quickly I learned that, special appropriations and supplementals were just far few, things that you barely ever did. And here we are. It seems like every week there's a special appropriation coming forward. And it's because the issues surrounding this pandemic have been so startling and so devastating for so many people. But now we're in this position of having to figure out what will that path forward look like for Montgomery County, even with some kind of federal support coming our way. We have to remember that before the pandemic, we were facing fiscal challenges. So this is not something to be taken lightly. I want to thank Mr. Madalino, Mr. Cavayu, I believe Ms. Feldman also is here, Ms. Bryant, and Mr. Mullen for being here. These are all folks that comprise the team of the Office of Management and Budget Finance, and of course the Chief Administrative Officer. And as I said earlier, Ms. Michelson, Mr. Howard, and Mr. Smith for working collaboratively to bring to us this packet for this conversation. It is my hope that throughout this work session, we're able to perhaps come to some agreement on what we would like to do vis-a-vis either updating the resolution 17-312 or perhaps just adopting a brand new one so that we can get on some kind of path to recovery that takes into consideration the challenges, but also the opportunities that we have here in our county. So with that, I think I would like to do is to turn it over. Let's see, is Ms. Michelson going to kick us off here, or is it Mr. Howard?
Yes,
Michelson.
I will start us off here. It is my job to provide an introduction to this meeting, but the chair has done such a good job that you've said most of what I wanted to say, and we really didn't coordinate on that either.
We did not.
Yeah. I will, repeat a couple of points or highlight a couple of points that you mentioned. And one is that, why do we need fiscal policies? And there are two, overriding reasons we do. One is that our fiscal policies prepare us for the unforeseen in the future. By having a reserve, by having a debt service policy, we are prepared. And, there was no better example this past year than when the pandemic hit. And we had built up our reserves. We hadn't quite reached our target yet, but we had enough reserves to be able to comfortably deal with an emergency situation. We never know what's going to be coming in the future. Having these policies be sound and prepare us for the future is critical. Second, as you'll hear in more detail, having sound fiscal policies leads to our AAA bond rating, which sounds like something that, is not understandable to most of us, except the key point is that AAA bond rating provides a lot more dollars and flexibility for us. So they are really critical. As the chair noted, these fiscal policies were last updated 10 years ago. It is time to relook at them, to confirm the ones that we think, still are in good shape and don't need to be changed, but to update based on our knowledge over, where we may still be a little bit weak and tighten things up. We think that puts us in a great situation. Updating the fiscal policies is really just a first step, and you'll see the discussion we're having now is generally about fiscal policies. But once you do that, there's going to need to be subsequent steps to say, how do you implement each of these fiscal policies and how do you deal with specific problems in given years? And so this is not all of the work that needs to be done. This is just a first step. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Smith and Mr. Howard to take you through the memo.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to start, and we're going to kind of walk through the memo. Mr. Smith will have a couple slides that he'll show to kind of illustrate some of the points, some of the data and background information. And then as we get into suggested or potential revisions to and updates to the policy, we'll kind of go slowly and pause at each spot for discussion and questions and comments and all that kind of thing. So we'll kind of make our way through the whole packet. The only other thing I'd note in terms of background, in 2011, when the council and the executive worked together to adopt the fiscal policies, we were in a different position. So there was also a lot of budget actions that needed to be taken, and very difficult budget actions, including rebasing the MCPS budget, substantially reducing department and agency operating budgets, progressive furloughs for county government employees, as well as enacting a package of changes to employee benefits for group insurance, pension, retirement, as well as retiree health benefits. So combined, the whole series of decisions help the county navigate through the Great Recession, and adherence to those fiscal policies has put us in a stronger position when this pandemic started. But at the same time, the pandemic has kind of pointed out some potential areas where we can update and revise and hopefully strengthen the fiscal policies, and hopefully kind of, again, help lead us through the difficult decisions that have to be made without needing to take as many of the very drastic actions that were needed back in the Great Recession. Ms. Michelson had mentioned the AAA bond rating, so I want to just spend a couple seconds talking about that. Because that's comes up in the discussion a lot of why fiscal policies are so important. And the county was one of few counties that hold the AAA bond rating from all three rating agencies. And we've held that honor since 1973 through rigorous standards and strong financial management. And the benefits of the AAA bond rating are more than just being able to say that you have a AAA bond rating and having that being able to show someone a piece of paper in the CAFR that says we're AAA. But there are some very tangible benefits. First, the state provides the county with the lowest interest rates the market allows when issuing debt, either general obligation debt or other types of debt. And with that rating, the county can more easily access markets to compete for low interest rates in a timely manner. The lower borrowing also enables the county to fund many important projects to continue economic development, which, as the GO committee chair mentioned, helps in turn grow the tax base and allows the county to maintain its strong financial position. So the AAA bond rating really ties into the council and the executive's economic development goals and strategies. At the same time, there's also tangible impacts to a rating downgrade. First, it would result in greater borrowing costs for the county. So a recent estimate conducted by the county's financial advisors estimates that a one-notch downgrade would result in increased borrowing costs of between $5 to $27 million over the cycle of the current CIP. And again, these additional costs would then further restrict the county's budget because more money would have to put aside for those purposes, leading to less flexibility and with the potential impacts on overall economic development and growth. And additionally, there's the kind of non-tangible benefit of being the institutional pride and that comes from being a AAA rated jurisdiction. And the last thing is that it's very difficult to retain a AAA bond rating once it's lost. So it's imperative for everyone to keep that into mind. And with that, I will then turn it over to Mr. Smith to start running through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. I'm going to begin by switching it up a little bit by going to page 7 first in the packet of those of you that are following along and just review some of what's already in Resolution 17-312. A bulk of the resolution deals with the reserves, as that was a really important element during the last recession and last update. And thus the staff provided a lot of details about that, but I think it'll be more important to also just go through some of the elements that are in Resolution 17-312. So there's 7 items. One of them is reserves, I've already noted. The first item is it's a goal of the county to have a structurally balanced budget, meaning that our expenditures should not exceed revenues and net transfers. We do this every year, both through the recommended operating budget and when the council approves an operating budget. The one item, especially as the pandemic has resulted in the use of reserves, to make sure that we note, is that the recommended and the approved operating budget shouldn't be using reserves as part of the budget balancing tool. That's a non-recurring revenue, and so it's certainly important to note that we should expect to see a recommended operating budget and approved operating budget that does not rely on reserves to be structurally balanced, because that would not be. The next item in the resolution is use of one-time reserves, which the goal is to use one-time reserves to fill reserves to the policy goal if they're not at that, and then also list some other items as long as there's no legal restrictions on what the use of the one-time revenues are for. The third item that's in the resolution is pay-go or pay-as-you-go for the capital improvements program. The county's goal is 10%. We do this every year. 10% of the general obligation bonds that will be issued. And this just helps to offset some of the debt service cost and reduce the debt service cost in the long term, rather than borrowing more than we normally would by using this as a 10%, by having a 10% pay-go policy. The next element is the fiscal plan. Council approves a 6-year fiscal plan every year that is structurally balanced. And as staff noted, there was some work to be updating this tool, and the pandemic has kind of short-circuited that for now, but certainly as the council continues to respond to the pandemic after the fiscal 22 operating budget, there may be times to revisit that to continue to see how that tool is updated. So, and then the next item is, and then I'll spend some more time on going through just the background of it, is the reserve policy. There's a large section of the resolutions devoted to the reserve policy. I'll try to be quick just to make sure I highlight some of the key points. The first is there's 3 elements to our county government reserves. The first is the general fund reserves, or the undesignated balance at the end of the year, or that we don't appropriate or And so the second element is the revenue stabilization fund, which is our rainy day fund. And then the third element is some other tax supported funds, but those are as policy set to close to zero as possible. So really in the end, when we're talking about our county government reserves, we're only referring to the general fund reserves or the undesignated balance and the revenue stabilization fund. And I'll just note, as I hear a lot right now, as we talk about the pandemic and our fiscal situation, the question is, what are our reserves at today? And that's a challenging question to answer because it's a matter of doing a lot of estimates in terms of what we think we're going to spend, what we think we're going to get in revenues, and so that we can figure out where at the end of the year our reserves will be. But as noted during the December update, the current reserves are lower than were anticipated and budgeted in fiscal 21, about $133 million lower. And certainly as we get the recommended operating budget from the county executive in March, more information will be known and the reserve, any reserves for 21 and obviously the future years will be more illuminated than they currently are. So the county's goal for the reserve policy is 10% of our adjusted governmental revenues, which includes our general fund tax supported revenues, as well as some other federal and state grants. It's a rather comprehensive look, and it illuminates the fact that the county is responsible for several funding mandates, such as MCPS and Montgomery College and Park and Planning. And so we include all of these into one large bucket to figure out whether we have 10% reserves or not. And Mr. Howard noted I was going to show slides, but I think for the sake of time, I'll just quickly move through these elements that are already in the staff report. So in terms of where we were from fiscal 7 to fiscal 20, and I'm referring to graph 1 on page 4, it shows the budgeted versus actual revenues. And while we see that the policy was lower during the earlier years on the graph because we had a 6% policy goal prior to the Great Recession, we now have a 10% policy goal, and so it kind of shows the shift in that. And as well, it shows that at least for the last 5 or 6 years, we've budgeted more than we've actually been able to achieve in terms of reserves, or put another way, our actual reserve level ended lower than budgeted. And part of the reason for that, I will get to in a minute in future graphs. The next thing I want to note is in terms of the graph 2 on page 5, which kind of shows the two elements, the revenue stabilization fund, as well as the general fund reserves, as well as the reserve level that we actually ended at for fiscal 07 through fiscal 20. The council staff notes several important elements from this. One, we were at very dangerous levels for our reserves during the Great Recession. Clearly 0.1% is barely any room during fiscal 10 to have any budget room for unforeseen circumstances, which is part of the reason why the county executive and county council did so much work during the Great Recession to make sure our reserve policy was more robust and strengthened coming out of that. And clearly coming out of that, the county made significant strides. We see consistent increasing to the reserve level, and especially for the revenue stabilization fund, the county's and the council's approval of the amendments to that revenue stabilization fund have bolstered our reserves throughout the last 10 years, and will continue to do so and continue to have a rainy day fund that's ready for the rainy day. But the other thing to note is obviously in fiscals 15 through 20, we can see that the general fund reserves, the undesignated portion, continue to decrease both as a percentage and as a total of the total reserves. And there's some reasons for that the council staff shows in the background, which is primarily that we have a mismatch between our budgeted revenues and our budgeted expenditures and what we actually get in. And so it's important to note that a lot of the reasons why the general fund reserves have not reached the 5% policy goal that we have each year as we budgeted is due to the fact that revenues have been less than projected during the fiscal 15 through fiscal 20. Some of that's just the difficulty of budgeting revenues. Some of that's on things outside of our control, such as the federal sequestration and other things. But the reality is that when revenues and expenditures are not aligned in the budget, we end up using some of our general fund reserves at the end of the year to balance the budget. So I will pause there in case there's any questions, because the next section is where council staff gets into some of the recommendations. So I want to get a chance to respond to some of this background.
Sure. Colleagues, any questions regarding the background instead of like how we got here? I think the only thing I will add is that, of course, some of us still have PTSD from that time because it was quite an extraordinary situation But I think that, you know, and some of the people that are here from OMB and finance were there then as well. And there's no doubt that what was different, in my opinion, is that I think generally speaking, understood the root causes of that particular recession, and were able to quickly assess not only where we were, but where we were going to be if we did not, you know, adopt this combination, this sort of package of particular actions, because it was all about the structural approach to this. And I remember just literally, you know, looking at the projected deficit, and it was just mind-blowing, the situation that we were facing. I will also say that it was, of course, politically risky for all the elected officials, because the decisions that we had to make were absolutely political suicide, if you want to use that term. But of course, you know, we are elected to make sure that we're looking out for the best interest of the county as a whole, not for our own individual political futures. And it was, I think, quite incredible that council immediately said to the county executive, who first brought a menu of options, yes, we believe that we need to do this, but then secondly, we may have to tweak some areas. And the most significant one was the rebasing of the school system. I'm sure Mr. Madaleno remembers that. But it was the only way for us to be able to get ourselves back into some strength fiscally. And so, you know, going to these rating agency trips are not just about what was just discussed, you know, finding a way for us to retain AAA bond rating because it saves money. It really does allow for a complete presentation of the county's fiscal standing and a thorough examination of that as well. And I, you know, have to say that the folks that I would travel with to New York from our finance department and OMB and economic development, everybody was so committed to making sure that we would find a way forward. The difference of where we are now is that we don't quite know what is going to happen. We are, I think, fortunate to have made all those decisions to get us to this moment in time. But I think we can all agree that the virus is like it's an invisible root cause. I mean, you don't know how it's going to behave. You don't know what the variants are, you know, going to do to us. I think it was easier to shut things down. Now, as we're reopening, you can see how complex all of this really is. And I said before, notwithstanding the federal help, because this is so unprecedented, because none of us has that manual for a pandemic economic recovery, we just don't know. And that is why it is so critical that today we come together to examine where we are, where we need to be, and I think also perhaps the committee agreeing to what we may want to include in this resolution that would be presented to the full council. But I do believe that we should try to do this before the budget. It is that critical. And I know it's sort of, you know, fast tracking things, but the reality is that we don't have a choice. We need to be able to put forth some kind of a comprehensive, I think, framework, if you will, for how we are going to move forward in order to preserve our fiscal standing and protect that. And of course, be able to respond to our residents' needs. All of that goes, you know, comes together. And so again, I'm not thrilled that I have to do like a round two of this type of very difficult but important exercise. But it is why we've been elected. To me, this is one of the most fundamental reasons why we are elected into office, is to be, you know, to be the stewards of the economic and fiscal stability of this county. Nothing else matters if we don't get this right. as it was said earlier, losing the AAA bond rating means that it is very difficult to regain it, but it's symbolic of what it means. Once you allow something so important to then be lost, it is so much more difficult to get back on track. So that's why we're here. And with that, I think we could get back into discussing now where we are in the staff's recommendations of some of the areas that we may want to strengthen, and also agreeing on some kind of a timeline for us to get there. Understanding that, again, these are still unprecedented times, but having that timeline, that schedule is very important versus just kind of like making it up as we go. With that, I want to also welcome Council President Hucker, who's joined us.
Thank you.
And absolutely. And let's see. Let me turn it back to Mr. Howard, since I don't see any other texts or any raised hands, and then we can start going through the specific areas that you guys have put together, and we can open it up to a discussion as well with our folks from finance and OMB as well. Mr. Howard.
Thank you. So now we have on page 7, going on to page 8, we have our discussion of the short-term recommendations. And then actually Mr. Smith is going to start with the first few, then I'll come in at the end to do the last 1 or 2.
Thank you. And as Ms. Navarro noted, the council staff's approach to this is kind of several fold. First of all, resolution 17312 could just be easily amended. But like we did during the last recession, I think council staff's approach would be just to be amend and restate. 1 allows for a cleaner resolution, but 2, it also kind of moves the new fiscal policy resolution to the forefront and doesn't leave it back in 2011 for a reference point, because that's where it would exist. But that certainly is up to the committee. So the approach to here would be to amend and restate the resolution. And again, the other approach that council staff took was noting that I don't think, as you noted, Ms. Navarro, there's no manual for pandemic response and economic recovery. And so this policy resolution has no idea of how to respond to a pandemic back in 2011. We're still learning that. And council staff also doesn't want to restrict future responses by future executives and councils. And so some of this is high level in general, because we believe the policy just needs to state clearly what the goals are for the county. And whether the GO committee and the council would like to have more specificity in the final resolution is totally something that council staff will easily put into the final resolution, or ultimately it could be a companion resolution that responds specifically to this pandemic in terms of timelines, et cetera. That's up to the council, but both are options that council staff is ready to prepare. And so with that, I think we'll go ahead and jump into kind of the meat of the recommendations. Some of these are fairly easy. I think will be for the sort of policy, because as the pandemic has illuminated, the current resolution just says we need to get to 10% by fiscal 20 and stay there indefinitely. But that doesn't allow the county to respond to emergencies, because then in the midst of an emergency, we always need to get back to 10% the next year. And so council staff believes that there should be a provision in the updated resolution that allows for the use of reserves during certain emergencies. And looking at other jurisdictions and other ways to do this, our recommendation is kind of use two trigger points. The first one would be a recession, which is a gross domestic product decrease over 2 quarters, or the second one would be a nationally declared emergency that includes all or part of the county. And so we think having that provision where those 2 trigger points are met, or not both of them, or one of them is met, that allows for the use of reserves, is an important strengthening element to the resolution. I'll pause there for discussion with the committee and our colleagues that are here.
All right, colleagues, any thoughts on those 2 trigger points there? Councilor Murphy-Chin?
Yeah, no, I support that. I think just the idea that as was noted before, that the chair and the prior council and the prior county executive made a lot of really tough decisions. It makes these decisions easier than they otherwise would have been. They would be impossible. We literally would not be able to address this crisis. And I think that needs to be said over and over and over again. But it also notes the fact that if we're not serious and meet the same level of sobriety from a fiscal perspective now, the next crisis that could come. And by the way, we're seeing in Texas and other places, just because one crisis is occurring doesn't mean others can't also happen simultaneously. And the vulnerability that we have to be able to meet that is threatened. And we have to, there might not be a manual for this, but we need a plan for it. And up to this point, frankly, we haven't had one. And I think the prior council, and I deserve no credit for this, but the prior council deserves credit for setting a target and working to get to that target. But we have a destination and with no plan of what to do once we get there. And so that's what really this is about. We deserve credit for getting to the place that we had hoped to get to, but now we have to have a plan for what happens when we get there. I think that these two triggers are appropriate triggers. They're serious and they're specific. And I think that that is what is required. And so I think that this is a good recommendation. Hope we can pursue it.
Thank you, Councilmember Friesen. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much. I too agree with the triggers. I Googled, I was at lunch one time and I was talking about the AAA bond rating with someone, and they said, that's not a big deal because everybody has a AAA bond rating. So I actually Googled it and wrote it down afterwards. Of the 3,000, and this was in 2019, I believe this goes back, but of the 3,007 counties in the United States, there are 47 at that time that had a AAA bond rating. So yes, this is a big deal. And it's my understanding, and there again, this is according to Mr. Google, so I don't know, this could change, but it's my understanding that only 2 United States corporations have a AAA bond rating. So this is a huge deal, and our reserves obviously are something that help us keep our AAA bond rating. So we do need a plan, and we do need to keep to that plan. And I agree with you, Councilmember Navarro, that we should do this before the budget, because doing it after the budget is not going to be as much of a help as doing it before. So I'm fine. Bottom line is I'm fine with these 2 triggers. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Well, we are okay and feel that this would definitely enhance the resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Navarro. And then a part B to that, obviously during emergencies, there will be ongoing expenditures that need to occur, but council staff believes that there should also be a part of this new provision, just that the county's goal is to obviously limit the use of reserves to meet the emergency. And as the council did without having a resolution immediately in place, although that was put in place by Ms. Navarro and then Council President Katz last year, continuity of services approach for the fiscal 21 budget. The council clearly has ways to approach limiting expenditures to meet the current emergency and also limiting reserve uses for the emergency. But council staff still believes that even though the triggers would be met, that the council just needs to, our county should say that its goal is to obviously keep expenditures focused on the needs of that emergency rather than just open Pandora's box for anything possible. So that's kind of a part B to our first recommendation, is just include that provision, but I'll stop there for committee conversation and reaction.
I think that memorializes what we did. So I think it's very important. And seeing the nodding from my GEO colleagues, I think that we will accept that.
Very good. And then the second element that needs to be, the council staff believes should be added, and I believe our finance and OMB colleagues also agree, is that we need to have a replenishment policy, obviously, if the county is going to have a use of reserves during emergencies. Council staff still believes that the goal will be a 10% target goal, but once an emergency occurs, sometimes those emergencies continue, as this pandemic has. Sometimes things continue to be outside of the control of the county. And so having a replenishment policy both sets the goal for the council and the executive to figure out how to get back to a 10% policy goal so that those reserves are there for future emergencies. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends a 1 to 3 year replenishment policy. And the rating agencies obviously also look for this. And so council staff believes that a provision should be added that sets the goal that the county will, following an emergency, will reach its 10% goal or its policy goal within 3 years. And this can be done several ways. One of them will be that the fiscal plan, the 6-year fiscal plan, should show that replenishment schedule within reason. And then Also, council staff believes that we should not wait to the last year, like kick the can down the road should not happen in this situation. So the policy goal should be that we do our best to replenish the reserves in a reasonable time frame. And so in the end, that is council staff's recommendation to add that as a policy goal within this resolution. And I will again pause there for committee conversation.
Thank you. That's such an important component of this conversation because, again, I think that, as has happened in the past, I believe that rating agencies do appreciate the fact that under these kinds of very difficult circumstances, jurisdictions are going to have to respond. But obviously, it's not just about the response, it's about how are we going to get back on track to be solid and to be strong for the next emergency. So having a particular schedule is really important. So I'm glad that we are having that discussion right now. Councilman Peterson.
Yeah, I think this is perhaps one of the most important parts of the conversation. Obviously, the 10% goal is important, but the discipline with which we repay going below the target is critical. I think it's important to remember, and I don't think we often think about this, but when we spend money out of the reserve, we're basically borrowing it against the next fiscal year, or in this case, the next few fiscal years. And that's essentially what it is. And so any decision that we make should be done because it's an emergency, understanding that there has to be an offsetting decision in order to get back up to the policy goal within a period of time, whether it's the next fiscal year in a non-emergency or the 3 fiscal years in an emergency. I think 3 years is an appropriate time frame. I think it's important that it starts once you dip below the 10%. I don't think we can extend it beyond that, but I think having it specifically written in the time frame as within 3 years, I think is really important, and I think it will help us to actually follow through with the policy commitments that we're making.
All right. Okay. I don't see any other comments or hands, so I think we will definitely agree to that language.
Very good. And council staff would like to clarify that this will be part of the emergency use of reserves. So certainly in years of expansion or normal years where we're just budgeting, the 3-year clock would not set in just because reserves got used during a normal economic expansion. The expectation would be that the county's goal is to get back to 10% the next year if any reserves were used the previous fiscal year. The other thing council staff will note, as we noted in the staff report, is that obviously this is a very germane topic to now and today. Council staff did update where we think reserves will end at the end of fiscal 21 in January, and that number continues to change as we get more information, both in terms of what the state is doing, both on the revenue and expenditure side, what the federal government's doing, and then just our own internal updates. And so it's very challenging to figure out where the county will end fiscal 21 reserves, but certainly the closer we can get to the 10% policy goal within reason, the easier it will be to get back to the 10% within 3 years. And that's obviously going to be part of the ongoing conversations, not only at this committee, but with the council and the executive as we get closer to the fiscal 22 operating budget. All right, then I'll go ahead and move on to the next item. That was some of the heavier lift, because those would be adding new provisions to the resolution. The next one is just clarifying the use of one-time reserve revenues. This is already part of the fiscal policy resolution, but council staff feels like it, especially given that we're been receiving a lot of one-time revenues during this pandemic, that it could be helpful to clarify some of the county's goals for this. As on page 9, we note what the current resolution states. And so certainly council staff wants to continue with the same prioritization, but give a better or clearer understanding of how that prioritization works in the actual text. Right now, it leaves it up to some discretion, but it also doesn't clearly indicate what the county's goal is as we get one-time revenues. And so as long as those one-time revenues do not have any legal restrictions by law, obviously some of the CRF money or CARES money that the county received in the first go-round had legal restrictions, and so it would not apply in this situation. But anytime we receive one-time revenues that have no legal restrictions, Council staff believes that the first and foremost thing that the county needs to put the money towards is its reserve policy goal if we're not at that reserve policy goal. And then after that, it becomes a little looser in terms of how the county could use that. And council staff believes the original resolution was doing this and continues to in that vein where obviously if the other post-employment benefits or pension funding was not fully funded as it needed to be in the fiscal year, that those should go back to the 100% level if we have one-time revenues, if the reserve policy goal is met. And then following that is kind of the smorgasbord that is in the resolution, which is other unfunded liabilities, non-recurring expenditures, or pay-go for the CIP if we want to go above what the 10% policy goal allows. And clearly in the pandemic situation, a non-recurring expenditures is a great place for one-time revenues to go, and that would be part of this policy resolution. And so as you can see on page 9, we provide some illustrative language of how this could look in the future resolution, which again, I think is a matter of clarifying what the current resolution says, not trying to change what the current resolution says. So again, I'll pause there for committee discussion.
All right, any comments, any questions from my colleagues? I think those seem very straightforward. Councilman, yeah, okay. We approve.
Very good. Then items C, D, and E that are on page 10 of the recommended the recommendations for council staff for short term. These are policies that the council already reviews, includes, but again, trying to make this fiscal policy resolution at least a comprehensive one-stop shop, so to speak, for where the fiscal policies are. That was council staff's intent here. And so the council for the debt policy has the pay-go or the pay-as-you-go for the CIP in this resolution, but it doesn't reference any of its other debt policy, which is normally reviewed during the spending affordability guidelines for the capital budget. Council staff doesn't believe we need to include the specific policy goals, although this resolution could, but certainly a reference that the council has a fiscal policy for debt service and debt policy, and that's done during certain points of time in the year. Council staff believes having that just as again a universal reference in this fiscal policy resolution would be a good idea, and recommends that that get included in the future updated resolution.
Yeah, I think that's important to include that language. And without objection, we're fine.
All right. And similarly, the other post-employment benefit has its own resolution, but again, helping this resolution have a reference point. Council staff just wants to include that here as a reference point for where that resolution is, and if that resolution should be updated, amended, obviously this resolution will reflect that as well. And so again, council staff recommends that reference point be added.
Without objection? Yep, we're good.
And then the final point I have before I hand it back over to Mr. Howard is that the current resolution mentions fund balances for some tax supported funds, but there are fund balance policies for a lot of other funds that are not included in this. The council reviews those fund policies during its operating budget review and approval. And so again, similar to the Opeb and debt policy, we figured these policies exist and are reviewed during the operating budget review.
All right, without objection. Okay.
Very good. I will hand it over now to Mr. Howard for the next couple items that we have.
Great, thank you, Mr. Smith. So the next and the last of actually the short-term recommendations, and this is again another addition to putting something into this to a single policy, is the policy statement on compensation sustainability, which the council approved in December 2019. And as you'll recall, this statement is that the compensation cost sustainability should kind of where compensation costs should align with the long-term annual growth rate of taxpayer revenues. And if the rates differ in any given year, the executive should explain how the changes would be accounted for in the budget. And so council staff recommends including this in the resolution to again have a single unified resolution with all different fiscal policy elements contained within it. And I'll stop there.
All right, without objection, I think we're just restating what we already put into place.
Yep, exactly. All right, so the next section is we're going to start talking about a couple of long-term options. And I'm going to start with Opeb. The council obviously makes significant Opeb contributions both in two places, one in Opeb pre-funding as part of the trust fund each year, and also as in the annual pay-as-you-go costs, which are funded out of the operating budget for the current retiree healthcare costs. And as the committee has discussed before, when we had a work session in September 2019 on OL Report 2019-11, cost of retiree health benefits, the current Opeb policy is very important, but it's also outdated. It essentially states that we should ramp up to meet our annual actuarially required contribution, tongue twister, each year. And we achieved that milestone beginning in FY15 and have continued to budget the full pre-funding contribution each year since then. So what we talked about in September 2019 and the committee supported was the council, OLO, and executive branch staff to work on three things related to updating and revising the Opeb fiscal policies. One was looking at creating a policy goal or a milestone for future Opeb pre-funding progress. For example, is there a specific percent funded ratio that we intend to achieve by a specific year? Kind of similar in concept to what we've done with the reserve policy. The second piece being determining the level of funding needed to begin using the trust assets to fund the pay-as-you-go costs, similar to what is done with the pension plan. The current assets earn interest, and then those are used to pay for the current year costs. And when the county gets to that point, it will be a significant savings, as will the current pay-go costs are about $47 million for county government FY21, and those would no longer be needed to use. We would no longer need those to reserve those monies as part of the operating budget and freeing up expenditures for other needs. And the last piece was developing an explicit policy for when appropriated pre-funding dollars are deposited into the Opeb trust. So those were the things that the committee asked staff to start working on September 2019. And actually the GO committee was scheduled to have another update on these issues in last March, almost a year ago. But that work session, as well as the continued staff work on these issues, were postponed due to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. So staff has two recommendations for moving forward on the Opeb work. The first is to endorse the continuation of the current Opeb fiscal policies as part of the FY22 budget. So this would include fully funding the annual actuarially determined Opeb contribution into the trust for all the tax-supported agencies, and two, funding the annual pay-go costs as part of the regular tax-supported operating budget. And then the second would be for the committee to ask the council, OLO, and executive branch staff to re-engage in the efforts that we had begun and put on pause, and then propose potential updates to the county's Opeb fiscal policies. And in terms of a specific timeline, our thought would be that we would have a draft policy options ready for the GO committee consideration in the fall of 2021. And then after GO's review, we'd be able to have a full council review and hopefully implementation, adoption of a revised policy by before the end of the calendar year. And so all these updated Opeb policies would be in place in advance of the FY23 operating budget process. And I will stop there for comments, questions, or thoughts.
Thank you. This is an area, of course, of great interest to our retirees. And I think that, as you stated, we wanted to engage in all of this earlier. Pandemic kind of interrupted a lot of this deliberation, but I think it's important to set forth some particular timelines to ensure that we have a robust conversation, but also engage the CREA and the retirees. There's so much that are so interested in making sure that we are, again, putting forth very strong policies. Councilmember Pizza.
Yeah, I'm appreciative that we're coming back to this. We've been talking a lot about these issues. There were some pretty dramatic changes to Opeb assumptions last winter. We were going to discuss them and determine how to move forward. The pandemic obviously changed our ability to really dive deeply into them, and so we accepted them at face value with the understanding that we were going to come back to them. And obviously the pandemic has gone on much longer than we had expected, but I do think it's a really important conversation, one I've talked quite a bit about. And I just think it's important for us to remember on this, just like when we pay out of reserves, we're basically borrowing against the next year or the next subsequent fiscal years. In this case, with Opeb, a debt obligation on Opeb, on healthcare is really a commitment that we've made, and it's whether or not we are paying for that commitment and how much it's going to cost us down the road. I don't think anybody here has any interest in not fulfilling the commitment, nor have I ever suggested that. But the question is, how much will that commitment cost? And what will that commitment crowd out in terms of other priorities down the road? And the more serious we are about it on the front end, the less impactful it is on the back end in terms of fulfilling that commitment. So I really think that these questions are really important of understanding what the updated thought process and calculations are of actually setting targets and being diligent like we have with the reserves of setting a goal and reaching that goal. And so I think that this timeline, we all wish it were sooner, but given the pandemic, I can certainly understand the timeline and appreciate that we're getting back to this and that we're not going to allow another fiscal year to go by without addressing this for the long term.
Thank you. Okay, so we will definitely support the addition of this timeline for this in-depth conversation, and thank executive staff for also engaging in this very important element.
Wonderful. And now I'll turn it back over to Mr. Smith to do the last few items in the packet.
Thank you. And I guess in terms of kind of tying up loose ends, I'll just note that based on the short-term recommendations that the committee supported, council staff will immediately turn around a draft resolution for review by the GO committee. And once we get the general agreement that we met the expectations of the committee, we will obviously share that with our executive colleagues to make sure there are no comments there and get it finalized for the GO committee to introduce not tomorrow, but the following week. And so with that, I will also then move on to the last couple of long-term kind of strategies or options for the committee to continue to review. As we noted in the background, at least for the last 6 years, there's kind of been a mismatch with our projected revenues and our actual revenues. And I'll just reiterate, clarify, and emphasize that this is not a shortcoming of our finance department, our OMB department, or any of the work. Projecting revenues for local governments is challenging. Our revenues have several volatile sources that just change. And the other reality is due to the federal government and some of our state requirements, that they're just unexpected or unplanned things that happen. And so that's part of the reason our revenues have been low. But that unfortunately continues to kind of create a structural issue within the budget as we budget most of all of the revenues that we think we're going to get. And so rather than tackling that right now and before the next budget comes out, council staff thinks that this is a long-term option for the GO committee to continue to review and see if there's any additional work that can be done. Obviously, we would work with continue to collaborate with our executive colleagues to present information, and we're seeing this as an opportunity to do something maybe coming late summer before we get to the fall for the GO committee to have a more in-depth review and to see if there's best practice options for the county to consider as we look at structural balance, especially when it comes to projected revenues. And I'll pause there for comments and conversation.
Sure, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilor Murphyson in a second. I just wanted to note one of the paragraphs in this particular part of the packet has to do with economic development, and I requested that staff also include that reference because, you know, when we do go and meet with the rating agencies, and Mr. Covey, you probably remembers this, the very first time that we included a section on economic development, I actually have requested this because it is important, in my opinion, to be able to tell a full picture, a full story of the county's fiscal strength and our ability to ensure that we're creating jobs, that we are, you know, extending our tax base, that we are extending revenues. It's very much tied to what we do with our economic development strategy and how we position the county to do so. And I recall vividly one of the meetings when there were some questions about, you know, what are we doing to also position particular areas of the county where there may not have been too much going on in terms of economic development or redevelopment, et cetera. And it was great to be able to point to some of the master plans that we had just approved in the East County and some of the work already underway for revitalization projects like in Wheaton. So this is also part of the picture. And I think that as we move on to this conversation about additional efforts to maintain structural balance, we need to tell that side of the story, but also examine how we are doing vis-a-vis economic development, vis-a-vis great jobs, opportunities for our residents, very much tied to this, versus only focusing on the option of, well, perhaps we could just raise revenue by raising taxes. I mean, that is just kind of like a one-sided approach. So I wanted to make sure that this was also illustrated in the packet. So when we engage in these, additional conversations, I would like for us to then have that component of economic development and understanding where we are, where we're going, and how this fits into everything. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you for that. And I think it's a really important point as we talk about growing the tax base, how important that is to the revenues that the county has to support the priorities that we all share. And I really appreciate your leadership on that. I also think that this is, an important area that we're all working together now on creating a more collaborative approach to revenue estimating through the revenue estimating group that we've talked about putting together. I think this effort will dovetail very nicely. I really appreciate the executive branch's commitment to a more collaborative process that we've talked about in this committee quite a bit. And as Mr. Madalino very well knows about the state's process, Mr. Covey and others, and that I'm very familiar with, this will be a little bit more along those lines, and really have the staff-led, professional, collaborative approach, keep people like us out of it, which I think is the healthy and appropriate way to go. Our best of intentions sometimes don't always lead to the best of outcomes, and we allow the subject matter experts to do their work. But I think that will lead us to a good place, but needs to be part of a broader process. And we have talked about in this committee previously, and I hope that as part of this, some of the other opportunities, like with capital gains tax and creating a collar, which the state has done, noting that that is a volatile revenue stream. And sometimes we get overexcited about unique one-time capital gains changes based on federal tax policy or other dynamics that don't necessarily foretell an underlying change in the economic conditions in the county. And by setting a percentage collar around those revenue projections, it basically protects against protects against that temptation and some of the frankly mathematical anomalies that can be baked into projections. I will also note here, though, if this isn't just a matter of revenue projections being an imperfect science, and frankly sometimes an art and a science, we are frequently, very commonly, on only one end of missing the projections. If this were just about volatility, we would miss some high, we would miss some low, and over time that would smooth itself out. In this case, we're missing almost exclusively on one end, and that really does foretell a structural challenge that we have, that we need to dive much deeper into, and ensure that it's okay to miss by a little, and it's expected that you're going to miss by a little, but we should be missing as often high as we do miss low. And if we're not doing that, then we need to change the way that we're estimating. And that has nothing to do with the hardworking folks in county government that are doing this. I think we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing, but we need to set in place policies and strategies that ensure we get to the outcome that we all want and expect. And so I think that this is a really important recommendation. I think it dovetails very nicely with some of the other work that this committee in particular and the council more broadly is doing, with coordination and collaboration with the executive branch, which is what ultimately we need.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz. We'll turn to Councilmember Katz, and then I'll turn to you, Mr.
Well, I'm going to be very brief. I just want to say me too. This is an extremely important item that we're working on. I think Councilmember Friedson and you, committee chair, have said it well, and there's no need for me to repeat, but I certainly am in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Katz. Mr. Madaleno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out that I think the state has never achieved the goal of the collar. As someone who was there for the creation of the collar, I think they have consistently undone their collar to the point where it's now a open to the belly button kind of shirt. So the collar has not worked as anticipated. So.
Thank you, Harry Belafonte, I believe. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Madaleno. Okay, so 2 final thoughts here I see in the packet.
Certainly. Since we were having a lot of conversation about reserves, that also brings up conversations about should we rebase reserves? Is there a different way to do the calculations, et cetera? Certainly, these are always good policy conversations to have. Council staff doesn't think we should be having it right before we get ready to do a budget. Or receive a budget from the executive as recommended and then have an approved budget. It's also good just to continue to review best practices across the region and nationally for this. But 2 areas that the GO committee could look at in a broader conversation with our executive colleagues is both the policy goal of 10%. As staff notes, the government officers, financial officers association suggests 60 days or 2 months worth of reserves. Even at 10%, we don't achieve that. Whether we should be higher than 10% is a worthy conversation, but obviously that would restrict more resources for uses in the budget and therefore would be a broader conversation. We also may decide 10% is a good policy goal and we want to stick with that as it's clearly given us plenty of buffer in this current emergency. And then obviously always the conversation of is our adjusted governmental revenues as defined by the revenue stabilization law the best base for determining what the 10% should be on. That should be as a companion conversation. Most jurisdictions just look at general fund tax revenues as far as revenues that they take in through their taxes. And as council staff noted, we use a broader definition or a more comprehensive definition because of some of the funding liabilities we have through the schools and other agencies. And as noted in the staff report, all the rating agencies use their own standard to compare apples to apples. And so regardless of what standard we think we should use, they're going to use their standard to rate us in terms of where we compare to other jurisdictions. And so both of these elements are just continued refinement if we want to do it, but ones that come up consistently when we talk about reserves, and we wanted to just note them as options to look at long term. Thank you, Ms. Navarro.
Thank you. I appreciate you including that language. This is not a new conversation for us. We obviously also did have some discussions the last time that we updated the resolution, et cetera, and are cognizant of the fact that 10%, even though it seems like it's a lot and it's been not an easy journey, it's not necessarily even the most widely accepted level, but we also need to understand our circumstances. And so I appreciate, having this in there, and we definitely can have another discussion again. But I just wanted to point it out that we've had these discussions in the past. Mr. Madaleno, your hand is up.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out that one thing that you might want to think about in the long term is not it's not 10%, but it's the AGR calculation. And with the enactment of the blueprint for Maryland's future, the Kerwin Commission recommendations, state aid is going to go up, knock on wood, dramatically over the next few years, which will drive up our reserve target requirement. So, that we have tied ourselves up to things that are completely out of our control, policy goals that we might completely support and want, but it could put us in a position where that's driving a need to put even more money aside in reserves at a rate of growth beyond where our revenues might be rising. So by including AGR as the target and not say 15% or 20% of our own revenues, that we need to make contributions that are not tied to decisions that any of us have a role in making.
Appreciate that, Mr. Madaleno. Councilmember Peterson?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. I think that's the whole reason why this needs to be revisited, which is the recommendation here, I think there's a lot of other aspects to that as well, because while we don't control some of those decisions, we do have fiscal obligations that are tied to them, and what the county's role is going to be and what the resources are going to be. And so as we look at the GFOA recommendations for the amount of time that we would need to be able to fund the county's costs, that ties into it as well. And so I think there's a lot, like many of these things, there are a lot of puts and takes that we have to think through. I think having that significant discussion and landing at the appropriate place with all of these different moving parts is important. And I think that is well taken, at least from my perspective.
Thanks. Okay, are we finished with the packet, I believe, right?
Yep, that's all council staff has for this report.
Okay, Councilman Peterson, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just related to this, I think having the resolution, having it be introduced on March the 2nd, having us adopt it before the budget is really critical. I fully support and I'm 100% behind the chair and all of her leadership on that. I'm wondering, as we head into that, of whether or not we should also have the thought process behind how we're going to treat the reserves for the closeout of this fiscal year and the repayment moving forward related to this policy, because it's on the one hand we have this broad policy of how we anticipate to treat these issues. We certainly qualify for the dynamics and triggers that we have set forth, but we also are in a situation where we're going to be making very tangible, very specific decisions as early as March related to this policy. And I'm wondering whether or not it would be appropriate either in a separate resolution as the chair led last year with the same services approach, dealing with reserves and a policy and plan for that as we head into this budget, or some other mechanism, or at least a signal, even through a more informal process to the executive branch of this is what this policy would mean and this is what our expectations are, so we can work collaboratively through the budget process to make sure that we're actually following the policy goals that we're committing to through this resolution put forth here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be important. I mean, I think our first step obviously is to go ahead and get this resolution going. And I know that the executive and his team understand what we're dealing with, and I don't think it would hurt to restate hopefully how the council wants to address or treat the budget process, given that we are not out of the woods yet. So I am not opposed to some kind of statement or just sort of reiterating our approach, which I think obviously needs to be similar to what we did last time, which we were just trying to respond very quickly to a budget that obviously had been formulated before the pandemic. So maybe our central office staff can take a look at that and maybe develop some language that we can all react to and present.
And I just want to add that although we think this is the first step, these policies, how you implement them is critical. If you come up with a policy statement, then you don't take the steps to implement it, it ends up being meaningless. So we will immediately begin to think about those strategies and try and run it informally by committee members to, kind of look at options and see how we can best achieve this goal.
All right. Let's see, Mr. Smith.
I'll defer to Mr. Friedson first.
Oh, okay, Mr. Friedson. Mr. Friedson.
I was going to defer to you first, but I'll go ahead. Yeah, so I think that the question here, the executive is formulating a budget as we speak. We have a policy now that how we're going to treat reserves and a repayment schedule to me, the question is whether or not we're going to be in a situation where the executive sends us over a budget that does not follow the policies that we are adopting. I would hope that that is not the case, and ensuring that we, set a collaborative tone, but a very specific expectation for, what the fiscal policy is going to be and what the budget should be addressing vis-a-vis the reserves. And, I understand that there's still an open question about federal funding, and if we get federal funding, then certainly 10% would be my expectation. But if we don't have federal funding, or at least don't have federal funding by the time that the budget is produced, and I think it will probably be close to when final decisions are made at the federal level, what will, what is the expectation that we all have for the reserve level that this budget is going to include as proposed by the county executive, and then ultimately what's the repayment schedule for FY 22, 23, and 24, in order to get back up to 10%. And to me, I just think that that's a really important part of the operationalizing of the policy that we've set forth here, as Ms. Michelson and the chair have noted.
I know Mr. Redding wants to speak. Let me just say that, I obviously am as eager as anybody to make sure that everything is going to flow very smoothly. But first, we need to have the council adopt this resolution with these updated targets. Obviously, it is my hope that Mr. Medellino and the team realize how important this is and how serious this is. And as it was stated, there is no point in doing it if we're not going to adhere to it. I'm obviously cognizant that there are 3 weeks out before we get the budget. So I hope that as they're putting the final touches, they take this into consideration. Once it is transmitted to us, then it's the council's budget, and then we'll have to respond to it accordingly based on the decisions that we have made. But it is very true that there is absolutely no, this is the first step, which is to set forth our commitment in writing and adopt that. The second step will be having going through the exercise of making sure that we are putting ourselves in that frame of reaching these targets. And that obviously will happen through the budget deliberation. But I just want to make sure that we understand that this is just a committee adoption. We need to first have the council adopt or agree, which I hope they will. Mr. Medellino.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I just want to make sure that the two OMB representatives who are on this call don't suddenly fall out of their chairs, because it's not like the budget is printed on March 14th. It's, the work on the budget is done much earlier. So I'm just trying to quote Dr. Gale's level set expectations of what we can deliver in adhering to a resolution that is introduced on March 2nd before March 15th as a deadline. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I hope that means an extra special attempt will be made for us to all work together, so that whatever is moving is something that we are in fact putting into the budget. And at the same token, I want to point out that the U.S. House Budget Committee is doing the final markup on the American Rescue Plan today. And press coverage over the weekend is that it will pass the House this week, and Senator Schumer, once it passed, expects it to pass before March 14th, which is the day that the enhanced unemployment insurance program runs out. So we should know before the budget is released. It was kind of Congress to tie it to our charter requirement, that we will have an idea of what we will know the federal aid that is coming our way.
Yep. Well, we will continue to to hold ourselves accountable and hopefully continue to collaborate to make this as smooth as a process as possible. But again, I think that, you know, as has been stated time and time again, the only reason why we've been able to navigate this unprecedented crisis is because of the very difficult decisions that were made in the past, which were absolutely a very strong collaboration between the executive and the council. We would not have been able to do what we did and achieve what we were able to achieve. So I hope that my expectation is that this is how we will continue to work to navigate this particular crisis. All right, so with that, I guess our staff have some, Mr. Smith.
Sorry, just two housekeeping items. Since this is an amended resolution that's going to be restated, the action will be on March 2nd with the introduction as per council rules. But council staff will put it off of, or recommend that it's not a consent calendar item that'll be given its opportunity for discussion. And then also just a note to Mr. Madaleno's comment, the resolution isn't changing enough to, I think, warrant any concerns for the operating budget. In fact, the executive will have, under the new policy, a 3-year replenishment provision to get back to 10%. Under the old policy, the recommended budget should have been to 10% in fiscal 22. So beyond that, council staff doesn't see this actually limiting OMB's ability to put a budget together any differently than what we were expecting. The resolution is going to be introduced and approved on March, or at least considered on March 2nd. Thank you.
All right, last comment, Mr. Councilmember Friedson, because
yeah, it's a question. I'm sorry. Well, Mr. Madaleno raised an interesting comment about how the budget is not developed on March 14th, which I totally appreciate. But given that, and that we're only a few weeks away, is there a specific reserve target that the executive branch is currently anticipating proposing in the recommended budget that we're scheduled to receive on the 15th?
We have not finalized that decision with the county executive, so I would not want to publicly comment on that.
Okay, all the more reason why I think it's very important that we have the council setting an expectation here, because certainly if the expectation is we're going to get federal funding, then 10% should be the target, and if not, then we have to be in a position where we can actually repay within 3 years. And I will just note, as we've said before repeatedly, and the executive branch staff has noted in their presentations to us, the likelihood is that fiscal 22 is going to be worse than 21, fiscal 23, potentially worse than 22. So we have to be prepared for that. And we're probably going to be in the best position we will be through this crisis, particularly after federal funding comes in. And so it's not about being prepared for July, it's about being prepared for 22 and beyond. And we have to be in a position to do that. I think this policy that we've worked on today will help us do that. But following that policy, starting now, is going to be really important. Thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging.
Absolutely. All right, Ms. Michelson?
Yeah, so if I can just reiterate from, even though the council won't take this up till next week, this replenishment policy is key. I cannot imagine the council won't endorse that. So having that be reflected in the budget and the fiscal plan, having specific targets, I think is going to be very critical. It's something that council staff will continue to work on with our executive colleagues so that we can have more specific targets rather than this kind of general statement that we'll get there at the end of 3 years, which will be difficult if we don't have real numbers to shoot for.
Absolutely. All right, well, thank you everyone for this really important session. I think that we got a lot accomplished, and it's because of our incredible staff and our partners on the executive side as well. This is all about Team Montgomery, and I think it's another pivotal moment in the future of this county. I mean, there is no doubt. And so I'm really pleased with what we've been able to do, and let's get it going so we can get the whole the council to approve it and make it be a living policy as well. So with that, I appreciate everybody, and I believe that we are adjourned. Take care.
Is often the cause. The seal is no longer tight, allowing